All right. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Neil Harden. I'm chairing today's panel. With me are Harvey Diamond and Kent Seelan. The assessor today is Stephen Lobenstein, and the administrative personnel is Louise Worley. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we'll limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony. Anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to applications of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application is being brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded will be part of the public record. We'll be hearing items 2, 4, 5, 7, and 9 on our docket today. Ms. Boyley, please affirm the assessor's and the applicant's testimony.
Okay, Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Stephen Lobenstein.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Albert Lindsay McCubbin.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The first property on today's agenda is 900 Lorimer Boulevard, Unit 300. So, Mr. Lobenstein, you can begin.
Sure. I think we spoke about this one before. I believe Mr. McCubbin's going to be, looking for confirmation, but I'll read it in first, anyways.
Okay.
The file number is 224327. The address is 300 900 Lorimer Boulevard, and the business assessment ID is 31311. And we have a total annual rental value of $382,500.
All right. And Mr. McCubbin, I understand you're requesting confirmation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm requesting confirmation of the annual rental value.
Okay. Is there any questions from the panel on this?
No questions from me, Mr. Chair.
And no question from me either, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much for that then. We will move on to item 4 on our docket, 1280 Inkster. So, Mr. Lobenstein, you can begin on 1280 Inkster.
Sure. For the roll year 2023, 1280 Inkster Boulevard, the assessment ID, the business assessment ID is 21075. We have a total annual rental value of $205,020. So the total area of the premise is 24,939 square feet. And we have an overall ARV of $8.22. So this overall ARV includes the base ARV per square foot plus the occupancy costs divided by the total square footage. So going down to, we're looking at the premise ID of 1500 in the first sort of, table there. You can see we have a premise area of 24,939 square feet, but we have a base ARV of $6.03. So this would be, this is our model rent. This is based off of the market. You can see my rent comparables below, which I'll get into in a moment. So this base, our ARV is based off of the model, so the rent comparables below. For this particular property, for the occupancy costs, we're applying full heat, electricity, and water to the total area, but only applying 2,850 square feet for the air conditioning. So this gives us a total occupancy cost of $54,616. When you add that to the base ARV, you get our total annual rental value of $205,020. Now, you can see that we are stating that there is a subject lease information here for 1280 Inkster Boulevard. It states that it is a net rent. So the lease starts in 2019. It's 1 year. The reported area is 25,000 feet and $5.25 a square foot. There is some questions about, I was trying to look into this a little further, that the tenant and the owner are related parties. So I don't know if this is something that I would rely on. And our model does not necessarily rely just on this. As I mentioned, our model relies on the rent comparables below. So below you can see we have 6 rent comparables. They're on Border, Erin, Church, Mountain, and 2 on Notre Dame. So they're in fairly close proximity to the subject property. The closest one being Church and Mountain. You can see the lease starts range from 2015 all the way up to 2019. So they're fairly recent. 2014 and 2019. You can see the ones that are 2019 and 2018 are fairly recent. And the terms are pretty typical for the market, ranging from 5 years to 10 years. The reported areas sort of bracket the subject property. They range from 18,800 square feet all the way up to 29,589 square feet. So they're all fairly similar to the subject property. And then you can see the reported rents for these properties. So these are actually net rents in the market. These are what these buildings are leasing for. And they range from as low as $4.83 all the way up to $7 a square foot. So they bracket sort of our model rent of $6.03 a square foot. Just moving down, I just have on page 2, you can just see the location of this property on Inkster. It's basically in the Inkster Industrial Park. It's north of the city. And then just on page 3, you can see an overhead shot. It's right in the corner of Fife and Inkster. You can see some overhead doors in the back where the trucks would unload and load. And you can see they have access from Fife to Inkster Boulevard. So we feel the assessed value of $205,020 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed. Thank you.
Great. Questions, Mr. McCubbin?
I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Kent, any questions?
Yeah, just curious about the air conditioning. I noticed your area is smaller. Is that an office area that's just air conditioned?
Correct. I should have mentioned that. That would be for the office area that we're only applying the air conditioning for.
Have you actually visited this site and seen this facility?
Not for some time. I didn't inspect it for this appeal, but I have been in this building years ago. Yes, but I can't really comment on what the sort of the state of the building is for this appeal.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Harvey, any questions?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Lippenstein, I guess your 2 best comparables insofar as the city is concerned is the properties in Church and Mountain. Would you agree with that?
I guess in terms of they definitely are the closest square footage and the closest when it comes to location.
Okay. Now, the difficulty I have is if we're going to agree that the model has determined a reasonable base rent, we have to know how the comparables compare. And we don't have pictures of them. We don't have photos of them. We just have acidity and square footage, but they could be very, very different. And I don't know how that really assists me in making that determination. And the onus is on the city to show that the assessment is a reasonable assessment. It's not up to the applicant to show that. So how am I supposed to use these comparisons to make that determination?
I mean, that's a fair point. I think what we've shown you is so we're showing you the lease term. So we're showing you the market for these properties. We're showing you the square footage and the location. So these are all important factors when it comes into deciding if our model is correct. So I mean, maybe we should have put year built on here. I agree, but for the most part, those are the lease start, lease term, and reported areas and location are very important when it comes to comparable properties.
And I agree with that answer of yours, but wouldn't photographs of the comparables also be, and of the subject property itself, both inside and outside, be helpful?
Sure, I would agree that.
So we know we're comparing oranges and oranges. I mean, otherwise we just have numbers in front of us, and I find that difficult to really use that as evidence.
I mean, you raise a fair point. I mean, in years past, we've only produced one page, the first page. I have added a map and an outside picture of the property. Maybe we, as a department, should reconsider adding some more for our business appeals.
Yeah, I think you should. But thank you very much. You answered my question.
Okay, and I have no questions. So, Mr. McCubbin, you can begin your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is Industrial Rubber Company. Rubber Supply Company, Ltd. As you've heard, the location of the premises, 1280 Inkster Boulevard. We're dealing with 24,939 square feet of premise area, Mr. Chairman. Current annual rental value is $205,020. Our requested annual rental value today is $185,520. If I can go to page 4 of my presentation. This brief description of the subject property. It was constructed in 1960 with warehouse additions occurring in 1997 and 2000. With mostly low ceiling, 12-foot and 14-foot low wall heights. Since the owner has moved to a new location in Dunlop in 2005, this location has become a secondary manufacturing location. And the office areas are now used more for storage purposes. You see a little discussion there with respect to the rectangular shape of the lot and its relative size of 90,272 square feet. It's zoned M2. Moving on to page 6 of my presentation, Mr. Chairman. The assessor has applied a base rent of $6.03 per square foot to the premise area for the 2023 annual rental value. The subject property was only owner occupied. It's within a related corporation as of April the 1st. So the assessor is correct in thinking that April the 1st, 2021. So we endeavored to do some appropriate market research. You can see the rents laid out below. I must say that these are rents that were taken directly from our realty brief, Mr. Chairman. This property was heard at this board recently, as of for 2023 realty value, or sorry, assessed value, and we have appealed it further to the municipal board, the decision. So the property was occupied by a tenant who is related to the owner as at the reference date. The rents that we're producing there, Mr. Chairman, 1 to 10, the average is $5.16, the median is $5.67. And based on the indicators, we apply a net rent of $5.25, which is incidentally the same that was reported to the Assessment and Taxation Department by the owner of the property. About 4 paragraphs from the bottom, 3 paragraphs from the bottom, you can see the original 2023 realty assessment is $2,145,000 was based on a model rent of $6.03. A subsequent amendment was made in 2003 realty is now $1,946. We still calculate the applied net rate to be $603 overall based on that decision. So that's that. However, we're using a base rent of $130,930 per annum, or $5.25 per square foot. That will be applied in our analysis. We agree with the occupancy costs, and it's not disputed. It's provided by the city. If you go to page 7, you can see the annual rental value workup. $24,939 at $5.25 with all costs added fully to the leased area. To the premise area, with the exception of air conditioning only, charged at 2,850 square feet, which would be the office area. So our total annual rental value, Mr. Chairman, is $185,520 rounded. And that's my submission. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Lobenstein?
Just 2 quick questions. On your page 6, well, first of all, so this is a single tenant building?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so then on your page 6, most of your comparables are multi-tenanted. Can I ask why you use mostly multi-tenanted and not single tenanted buildings?
As I've stated before, this is I've garnered this information directly from the brief that was presented at the municipal board, and that's a fair question. I suspect a lack of actual comparable, as we saw it, comparable properties to the separate property, given the age of the separate property, was a factor in choosing these.
Okay, those are all. Thank you.
Okay, Harvey, any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Kent, any questions?
Yeah, you've given a list of comparables. Can you tell us what would be the closest comparable to this property?
Mr. Chairman, just looking at the comparables themselves, I suspect something that's closer in size to the subject property would be the one on Berry, 26,547 square feet. However, it's older, and it is older to some extent, and it's at $4.25 a square foot. That would be my best comparable at this point in time. The lease start is September 1st, 2020, and it's for a 5-year lease term, $4.25 a square foot, with a wall height of 21 feet.
Have you inspected this property?
No, I haven't, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and I have no questions, so thank you for that. We will move on to the next property, which is 675 Goldsby. So give me a moment to open the files. Okay, Mr. Lumsden on 675 Goldsby.
So the roll year is 2023. The address is 675 Goldsby Street, and the business assessment ID is 343. You can see the total annual rental value of $443,700. The total area of all premises is 42,940 square feet, and we have an overall ARV of $10.33 a square foot. Moving down to my second table, you can see we're applying a base rent of $8.16 a square foot to this property. That gives us a base ARV of $350,390 when applied to the 42,940 square feet. Excuse me. For the occupancy costs, we're applying full heat, full electricity, and full water, but we're only applying 2,800 square feet to the office area for air conditioning. So that gives us total occupancy cost of $93,301 for our total annual rental value of $443,700. Again, our base ARV, the $8.16 a square foot, is based off the market. So we've gone to the market for to show you the rent comparables. Here we have them on Shuren, St. James, Debate, Sutherland, and Bunting. So they're kind of spread all over the city. The reason for this is because of the location of the property. So if you scroll down to my page 2, you can see that it's just off Gateway, the Valley Garden and the Rossmere area. This is not a big industrial hub. There are a few buildings in this area that have industrial attributes, but not a large extent. So for our comparables, we had to extend our search out of the area. That's why we had to look at Shuren, St. James, Debate, Sutherland, and Bunting. So they're sort of all across the city. You can see the lease start from 2012, and then you have 2 at 2019 and the other at 2020. So they're fairly recent, the majority of them. And we're looking at the lease terms. They range from 1 year to 12 years. And the reported areas, again, are fairly similar to the subject property at the lowest is 32,000 square feet, going all the way up to 47,000 square feet. So they sort of bracket the square footage of the property. And the reported rents, so these are the actual net rents. These are leased or contract rents in the market, range from $7.25 a square foot all the way up to $9.57 a square foot. And again, I do have one photo of the subject property on my page 3. And you can see the exterior of the property there. You got some loading at the front and at the rear or side of the property as well. So we feel that the annual rental value of $443,700 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. McCubbin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Looking at the information on page 1, Mr. Lovenstein, and you say that the subject lease information is owner occupied.
Yeah, that's we had that as owner occupied. I looked into this before. Apparently there is a lease in place. Just give me a second here. I had it up. I don't know where it went. We have some questions about the lease, though, and I have some questions about the lease when I was looking at it. So they only supplied for 2019 mailer. We didn't get the 2020 for the reference year. They're stating $3.75 a square foot, but they didn't tick off anything. They didn't show recoveries. They didn't say if it was net leased or gross. They didn't say what the owner paid and what the tenant paid. So there's definitely some questions about this lease.
Okay, fair enough. Those are all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Kent, any questions?
What would you say the best comparable you have for rent is from your comparables table for this property?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at probably 33 debates. It's in fairly close proximity to the subject property. 110 Sutherland's a little further away, a little newer building. 89 Bunting's pretty good comparable. So those would probably be some of the better ones.
Have you actually inspected this property?
No, I haven't inspected it, but we had there was additions added to a bunch of this property recently. So we've had in 2021, November of 2021, we had basically coworkers of mine out inspecting it.
What was the cost of the additions or renovations?
The additions were not necessarily. So this property is on an expansive property here where there's a bunch of there's a huge manufacturing portion to it, and then this building's sort of off to the side. The last time there was an addition to this property, or to this particular part of the property. Just give me a second. Yeah, 2007, there was a big addition. That would probably be the rear portion of the property where you see that. So that was the last time that there was a large addition put on.
And you know, cost of the renovation by chance?
Just give me a moment. It's approximately $300,000.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Harvey, questions?
Yeah, Mr. Livingston, I guess the question I have is the same as I had last time. I know the answer will be the same, so I think all of the properties I'd have the same question, so I'm not gonna ask it again. I think it's already been answered, but so I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and I have no questions. So again, Mr. McCubbin, begin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just have a comment to make before I begin my presentation. It puts me at a disadvantage, Mr. Chairman, when board members ask the assessor questions relative to the property on evidence that's not presented before this hearing. I don't have the information in front of me. I can't dispute it. I can't look at it. I think it's patently unfair. And this is not the way the procedure should move forward. But and I've made my thoughts known on this before, and I continue to make that. But and that's all I have to say about that. I'll go into my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
On page 2 of my presentation, the applicant is Inlet Incorporated. Premise address is 675 Goldsby Street. Rule number is 343 for VA purposes. And it has an effective year built of 1983. I believe as of recent, there has been an amalgamation of properties here onto one roll number. We do not represent the client with respect to the realty on this property. That is the owner, Mr. Chairman. We're just representing this specific tenant in this standalone building on a larger property. The premise here is 42,940 square feet, and the site size assigned based on my calculation is approximately 1.5 acres to this building. If you look at the property, you can see on page 4 just an overhead of the property. With the red dot, that's the actual building, and I've assigned approximately 1.5 acres to this essentially 1 acre building, which is 42,940 square feet. The buildings to the south or the bottom of the page on page 4 there form part and parcel of this holding also, I do believe. The 2023 annual rental value is $443,700. We request an annual rental value of $265,080. Turning to page 4 of my presentation. You can see it's just a brief description of the premise. It's a one-story industrial building located at the intersection of Watt and Goldsby Street. I do agree with the assessor, informed that it's not it's not located in an industrial park setting, so to speak. It's a hodgepodge of development in that area. It's best described as a light industrial manufacturing rigid steel frame warehouse with piecemeal construction with an effective age of 1983. Page 6, if I can get turning your attention to page 6, the assessors applied a base rent of $8.60 per square foot to this 42,940 square foot premise area. I have comparisons below that in a table on Dublin, Barrie, Inkster, Pound Mountain Boroughs Avenue, all chosen for similar type buildings and relative size relatively close to the subject property. You can see the rental range there is from $3.70 to $4.49. Based on the above, and considering site-specific attributes, including the location of such property, we feel a rental value of no more than $4 should be used for the business assessment purposes. So that's applied in our analysis, arriving at a base rent or a base net income, annual income of $171,760. The tenant has reported to us that there is a lease agreement with the owner commencing on July 1st, 2017 for a 10-year lease term at $3.75 per square foot. And that's net. And I did communicate with our client, Mr. Chairman, and there's no escalation in rent in that period. It is set at $3.75 a square foot starting on July 1st, 2017. And that is a net rent as reported. We're slightly higher at 25 cents more on the rent to adjust for time, in a sense, to arrive at a reasonable amount for April 1st, 2021, given the fact that they did begin on July 1st, 2017. We're in agreement with the occupancy costs. It's not disputed. So moving forward on page 7, you can see that the annual rental value calculation using $4 a square foot and all the costs associated with 42,940 square feet, with the exception of the office area only being charged for air conditioning at 2,800 square feet. We arrive at a value, annual rental value rounded of $265,080. I did not inspect this property, Mr. Chairman, and we did not represent this property owner with respect to the realty. And that's my presentation on questions.
Okay, questions, Mr. Lobenstein?
I guess are you basing your $4 off of your rent comparables and you're not taking the lease into consideration, or?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I'm taking the lease into consideration at $3.75 a square foot net. That's what is reported to us. But I also am looking at comparisons, and as you know, it's generally difficult to find comparisons in that area, so we have to go far, some distance to come up with some comparisons. And the reason why it's $4, there was a slight adjustment for time. The lease did start in 2017.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Harvey, any questions?
Mr. McCubbin, so I'm looking at your comparables and I look at the city's comparables, and why are your comparables better than what the assessment department has provided?
Why are they better? That's a good question, Mr. Chairman. I don't have the ages of the city's comparisons here, but I suspect, and this is just a suspicion of mine, they may be newer in relation to the subject property. The subject property is of piecemeal construction, and I chose these older properties and properties that are relative to the size of the subject property. I think I don't have photographs of them. This building, Mr. Chairman, is a steel building, so the age life would be somewhat less than, say, a masonry constructed building. I'm not sure if the comparison is provided by the assessor or masonry buildings or not, but those may be some of the comparative basis that I'd be looking for, that I think my comparisons might be better.
Okay, we really don't have much of an indication of either any of the comparisons, yours or the assessment departments, because all we can see is numbers. And again, I think, wouldn't it be helpful to have photographs and other information so we could really base it in a meaningful way?
That may be so, Mr. Chairman, but as the assessor said in the past, these have been very stripped down sort of presentations. I know in the past the assessment department had only produced a one-page document showing the calculation of the annual rental value with leases. Maybe in the future we should be a point well taken. In the future we should do some more presentation with respect to the actual building, so you can see what you're looking at in terms of the types of buildings. For example, this building is a steel building. You can see, I can show you the building, but you can't, you're not unable to see my comparisons, the type of buildings they are, and that may be helpful, but again, time may be of the essence in the circumstances too, with respect to presenting BA evidence at this time of the year. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and that's reasonable. I'm assuming the assessment department has the same time strain parameters that you described. Okay, thank you, Mr. McGovern.
Okay, Kent, any questions?
Yes, just to reconfirm, the age of this building is 1983, is that correct?
Yes, that's the effective age of the building. If you look at page 4, Mr. Chairman, you can see there were additions to the building, and you can tell just by the roof line, and you can see where the actual roofs were joined at different stages of construction. If you look at page 4 in the overhead.
Do we know what year the first building was built before it was renovated or additions were put on?
Oh. Yeah, with this specific building, I don't have that answer, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, just looking at your comparables, they all seem to be older than the current property. Does that not reflect that the value might be a little bit higher than the comparables?
That's That's correct, Mr. Chairman. The subject property, however, has lower ceiling heights than my comparables. And subject property is also a steel building, built in piecemeal construction. So that's some of the adjustments I would have had to make to come up with these comparisons. And also, the lease is indicative of the market value of this subject property also, so we cannot, it's, as you can see, the assessor has shown leases running anywhere from $7.25 to $9.57 for buildings that are running in the same vicinity in terms of size of the subject property, and mine is certainly less than that. So there's a wide range of rents for these types of buildings, and we feel that these comparisons are more point towards the value of this property for annual rental value.
Okay, now in terms of the lease, are the leasee and leaseor related? It's an arm's length lease?
That's something that was not discussed with me. It appears as though, Mr. Chairman, that it is arm's length, according to the discussion I've had in the last week with the agent. Sorry, with our client. It all appears as though this is above board. Now, did I do a search of the actual the vendor's name? I can tell you is Anvil Properties Limited, and the lease was originally under so the lease states 578851 Manitoba Limited from and to Anvil, ANVIL Properties Limited, spelled out in full. To answer your question, I have not done a search of these companies, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Levenstein, could you comment on the lease again?
As I mentioned before, we only have what was sent into our income and expense mailers, and there was very little information put on those. All it was the square footage and the rate they pay and the tenant's name. They didn't tell us if it was net, gross. They didn't say if there was recoveries. So I don't really have any information on the lease.
Okay, but you have no indication that it's not an arm's length lease?
It's not something that we weren't supplied the lease. I haven't spoke to the owner or the tenant about the lease.
All right. Thank you very much. I have no more questions. Thank you, Mr. McCubbin. I think that's your last property, wasn't it?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it is.
Okay, we'll go on to 180 Cree Crescent. So, Louise, can you swear in the next applicant?
Yes. Please state your full name.
Trevor Smith.
Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
All right. Mr. Lobenstein on 180 Cree Crescent.
Sure. The roll year is 2023, address 180 Crescent. The business assessment ID is 3996. You have a total annual rental value of $417,420. I do have a verbal recommendation for this property. The verbal recommendation is $405,660. That's $405,660. I came to this number and talking with Mr. Smith, and he informed me that there is some area of the building. It's an outbuilding that is not, well, if you look at my page 3, you can see off from the main building, there is a smaller building. He informed me that this is in fact an unheated portion of the property. So that's 4,320 square feet that we're changing the rent to $3 for that portion. And that's how we get to our value of $405,660.
And how do you feel about that number, Mr. Smith?
I'm in agreement with it, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any questions from the panel on the recommendation?
Yeah, if I could just,
Oh, sorry, Kent.
Kent, yes.
sorry, Harvey, if I could just get the actual dimensions and the rent that you charge for that space, I appreciate it.
So 4,320 square feet, and we applied a $3 rent.
Thank you, appreciate that. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Harvey, any questions?
No, I don't. I think that the rationale behind the recommendation has been adequately explained by Mr. Lobenstein. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Then we will move on to our last property, 1180 Springfield Road. Let me open the files. Okay, on 1180 Springfield, Mr. Lobenstein.
The roll year is 2023. The address is 1180 Springfield Road. The business assessment ID is 1976. So we have a total annual rental value of $2,795,580. For the total area of all the premises, you can see it's a fairly expansive building at 530,378 square feet. So we're applying an overall ARV of $5.27. Going down to my chart, my second graph, or second table, I should say, you can see the base ARV is $3.13 a square foot. And then we get an overall base ARV of $1,660,083. So for this property, we're applying full heat, electricity, and water, but only 18,726 square feet for the air conditioning. So that gives us total occupancy costs of $1,135,489. When you add that to the base ARV, we get our annual rental value of $2,795,580. Moving down to my rent comparables. So I have 7 rent comparables. You can see they range in reported areas as high as 228,000 square feet to as low as 180,000 square feet. I'm sure you can understand the difficulty in finding rent comparables that are over 500,000 square feet. They do exist in our market. So the best we can do are the ones that we have there today. You can see, and again, because of the size of this property, you have to extend out the search. So they're all over the city. They're in Inkster, Hutchins, Fife, Regent, King Edward, Sherwin, and Sony. You can see the lease starts. So there's some pretty new restarts. Lease starts there, 2020, 2021, 2019. There was a 2008 for Sony. That is a step up though. And 2014 for Inkster. So, and you can see that there's a large range in rents for these properties from $3.81 for Inkster all the way up to $8.96 for Regent. Again, if you go to my page 2, you can see where it's located. It's on Springfield Road, North Transcona area. So in terms of the closest comparable, those would be, I guess the one on Regent. Yeah, that's probably the closest one. But again, we had to look across the city due to the size of this property. And page 3 just shows you the expanse of this property. It's a massive property. Piecemeal construction's been built up over time. It's a huge manufacturing process and for kitchen craft. So, I mean, we feel looking at the rent comparables in the market that the total annual rental value of $2,795,580 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Smith?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. So as you'd mentioned, Mr. Levenstein, the subject property at 530,000 square feet would be is not a typical size for the subject for the Winnipeg market. It would be one of the larger manufacturing facilities in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I would say probably this one, and then on the tractor factory on Clarence there. They were probably the 2 biggest that I.
Okay, so that, and as you'd mentioned, that leads to challenges in looking for market evidence as far as rent for large scale industrial rents. Is that fair to say as well?
Well, I mean, there, like you said, as I commented on, there's only so much of a market for buildings over 100,000 square feet. So those are the ones that we're looking at in the market today, and those are the ones that we're trying our best to base our rent off for this property.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly agree. In looking at the rental comparables that are out there, I suspect we probably had the same issue in that the large tenancies that we were able to find are typically warehouse space, not entire, maybe not each and every one of them, but the majority of the rents that are out there that are available are for warehouse space. Is that fair to say?
As compared to manufacturing?
Yes.
Yeah, I think only, most of them are 1750 Inkster, I believe, is manufacturing for my rent comparables.
Okay, and probably 1093 Sherwin as well, I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. So in looking at the comps that you've provided here, I do have a few questions. So 1750 Inkster Boulevard and Inkster Industrial Park. So that property was purchased and redeveloped in 2015 by Artis REIT. Is that correct?
Give me a second here. In 2015, did you say?
Yes, that's what I have, that it was redeveloped in 2015 as they've stated on their website.
I don't know why, but honestly, we don't seem to have that sale in our system here. Yeah, it could be correct. I'll have to check that out. Yeah.
Okay, so they took an existing industrial building and completely redeveloped it with a new loading court fronting on Inkster, new exterior, new office space, many renovations inside. Is that I know somewhat unfair to ask these questions because you don't necessarily have looked at that information, but I do have to ask it. So is that a fair statement?
There has been interior alterations, correct.
Okay. Number 10, Hutchings. That's also in Inkster Industrial Park. Excellent loading capacity, high ceilings, etc. for warehouse space.
Yeah, this would be a warehouse property. Yep.
Okay. And 1155 similarly, very high ceiling heights at 28 feet for the whole building. Also in an Inkster Industrial.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. 1001 Regent, that would be the Amazon redevelopment of that existing 1001 Regent property, where they've kind of essentially gutted it and redone it for themselves in 2020 and 2021. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. Just trying to supply the background info for the board here. 1000 King Edward, so we're on Route 90 there. That would be the redeveloped Safeway warehouse, which would have been, I don't know what the full size of that was, but something like 800,000 square feet. Is that roughly accurate?
Yeah, that it would have been I'm not sure of the exact square footage, but yeah, it's quite large. A portion of it has been renovated. Yeah.
So they demised it into smaller tenancies, I gather, right?
That's correct.
Okay. 1093 Sherwin, this was Reliance Products, so that is a manufacturer.
Yep.
And then finally 1370 Sony. So this is located on the street that runs perpendicular to McGillivray between Pembina and Waverley on the south side, I believe.
Yep, that's correct.
And so that was built in 1988, 32-foot ceiling heights, one of the more modern warehouse buildings of its time in Southwest Winnipeg.
Yeah, it is a warehouse. That's correct.
Okay, and then the subject property in terms of location, so you've got it on your second and third pages there. So on Springfield, it's not in a typical industrial park area, essentially. It would be somewhat isolated there, would it not?
Well, I mean, sure, but I mean, I think for this particular property, they sort of need to be isolated. You can see by the size of their property, and they still have good access up to the perimeter from there. So,
okay, those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Kent, any questions?
Yes, I noticed in your comparables that you didn't list the tractor factory on Clarence. Is there a reason that the tractor factory wasn't part of your comparables here?
I was talking about Bueller, so he was just talking about the size of it. I was saying the only other size I could really think of that's manufacturing is a Bueller factory, and it's owner occupied.
Okay.
That's what I was alluding to. Sorry, my mistake.
No worries. I just was curious why it wasn't part of your comparables.
Yeah, I was just commenting on how there's probably only 2, maybe 3 properties of this size in the city. There's so few.
Understood. What is the actual year of the property, of the Springfield property? What's the actual year of construction or effective age? Do you know?
Yeah, you just have to give me a second here. I can give you the effective age.
Thank you.
We have an effective age of 1980.
1980?
Yeah.
Do we know when it was last renovated? By chance?
Give me a moment. There's building permits out in 2021.
Do we know how much they were for or anything like that? Anything about them?
Kent, I'm not sure that that's relevant in terms of rental value.
It's post-reference material, so I mean that's the relevant one. And again, this property has been extensively renovated over the years. It continuously expands.
Thanks very much. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Harvey, any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Livingston, so I look at the model and it's achieved a base rent of 313 per foot, and I'm looking at your comparables, and all of them are higher. Are you aware of any properties of this nature that have lower rents than the comparables?
Not in terms of net rents. These are the net rents that we could find that we feel are good market, like clean rents. So no, I mean typically no. So I mean the model is valuing it on economies of scale, so it has brought it down to the size of the property. These are literally the largest properties I could find that we know the rents are actual net rents.
Okay, and Mr. Smith already took you through this, and I think that the higher rents on your comparables are for warehouses, and the lower ones seem to be for manufacturing properties like the one that is subject here.
I would agree. Sherwin, the Sherwin one is manufacturing.
Yes.
So the rest of them basically are warehousing. I would agree to that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And I've got no questions of the assessor. So Mr. Smith, you can proceed with your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar to Mr. McCubbin, I do have to, I guess, register my my disagreement with the situation where we find questions being asked of the city, and when we're in a Zoom environment, the city can access information in their system and refer to information that's not presented in the materials before us today. And as Mr. McCubbin stated, essentially it leads to a tilting of the field where we don't have the same access to that information, and it does at least give the appearance of an unfair situation. So I do support Mr. McCubbin in that, and I've stated my feelings on that issue in the past, but we can move beyond that. I will address a few of the things that came up there. The one question that was asked that led me to ask that, of course, is when the property had its most recent renovation, so to speak, and that would be building permits essentially. Now, anytime you take out a permit to change electrical in a room or anything of that nature, you have to take out a building permit that registers as a renovation on the property. So whether one occurred in 2021 or not, I have no idea. I'm sure that they probably occur in every year, but that doesn't mean that the building is being renovated and being added onto or fully or renovated in any way that would add any additional value to it. It's simply maintenance of an extremely large property. If we're interested in the construction dates of the segments of the building, I have all of that information supplied on my page number 4, which we'll get to as we go through this. I think my starting points will be with regard to the size of the subject property to start with. As the assessor has stated, the subject property is one of the largest manufacturing facilities in Winnipeg, one of the largest buildings in Winnipeg of an industrial nature. There's only a couple that are in the same vicinity. That would be Buhler Versatile Plant in Fort Garry, which is a little under 800,000 square feet. You have Standard Aero and its complex over by the airport on Barrie, and they're in the 640,000 square foot area. And then you have MacDon a little further west in the Moray area. And they have a facility that's a little over 610,000 square feet. Now, those are individual buildings. They may have a few more that would add to the size, but the subject property is essentially the fourth largest manufacturing facility in the city. Now, those being manufacturing plants, they are owned and operated by the manufacturer themselves. So there are no arm's length rents that are out there for facilities of this size. In the Winnipeg marketplace, and indeed in secondary real estate markets in Canada, such as Winnipeg, the large-scale manufacturers do tend to own their facilities and not lease them. So there are no rents of 500,000 square feet. Indeed, rents of over 100,000 square feet are somewhat rare. 200,000 and up are almost non-existent. So we're looking at a situation where the closest rental rates in the marketplace are for warehouse space, and they are for sizes that are under half the size of the subject property that we're discussing today. Now, obviously, there's a lot that goes into the determination of rent, but size is a very significant contributing factor. Economies of scale are quite significant when you get to this size. So if you were to charge the same rent for property of this size as one of 1/5 or 1/4 the size, the actual rental amount is going to not be reflective of a true market rent and be somewhat prohibitive. So let's delve into my presentation here a bit. I will point out to start with that subject property was appealed for the 2023 realty assessment. The board did rule on this. And in my addenda materials, A1, A2, you can see that the board ruled based on our net operating income that I had presented with a different cap rate and excess land area. Now, we did appeal this result, but we did not appeal it on the basis of the rental rate being incorrect. We appealed it on the basis of the additional land area being somewhat excessive in being applied to the subject property. So that is the background for that. My detail with regard to my realty presentation is on pages A3 and A4 for you to confirm the amount that was requested at that time, which was $2.75 a square foot. Moving forward into the brief, the subject property zoned M2, it is owner occupied as indicated. The age of the property we'll get into on page number 4, but we're looking at a property that has a site size of just under 60 acres and a leasable area of 529,028 square feet. This is ever so slightly different than the city's 530,000 square feet, but this is the accurate size. The land to plan area ratio is shown there for you. Now, we move on to page number 4. There's a bunch of description here with regard to the construction details. What I will point out is that the subject property was built in stages as the owner occupant expanded their business over time. And as the business grew, they would add an additional section of the building on. So looking at the bottom of the page, you can see that we have a total of 13 sections that were built. The two most recent sections are quite small, as you can see, 234 square feet. And just over 3,700 square feet. There was a significant addition done in 2000 and 2001. But the majority of the building, there was some that was built in 1996, but the significant part of the building was built before 1978, with some built in 1989, as you can see there. So let's run through this a little bit. You look at the wall heights. We have a total of 34% of the building being 16-foot exterior wall heights or less. This is quite a low wall height in the Winnipeg marketplace for industrial. Certainly, if you were to look at this as being warehouse, which is the main industrial tenancy in Winnipeg, 16-foot is inadequate for a large majority of industrial users in the Winnipeg marketplace. Buildings aren't built with 16-foot wall heights anymore. Typically, we're seeing in the 28, 30, 32-foot range for modern construction these days. So 16-foot is very much on the small side, low side, and we have over 34% of the building registering in under 16 feet. Moving on, you can see the dates of each of the construction there, each addition rather, on my page number 4 in the chart. And we do have some of the building that was built with either 20 or 24-foot wall heights, that being built in 2000 and 2001. So that is a portion of the building. Again, those are higher, but it's not a modern high cube flex warehouse space of 28 to 32 feet that we see on the market that demands premium rents these days. Moving back into the text at the top of the page, size of the property of 529,000 square feet is equivalent to 12 acres. So when you look at a property of that size, you have 12 acres of roof to maintain. So that's an ongoing maintenance and repair issue. It's an aging roof structure, and they have water penetration on an ongoing basis, and they have a program in place to repair and maintain the roof as over time. But as you can see, of course, 12 acres is an enormous cost to them. The staged development of the structure as the business expanded has led to a variety of building sections, all with demising walls, which results in a less than optimal layout from a functional standpoint for industrial production or for industrial warehousing if it were ever to be used for that. This layout results in a very high degree of functional obsolescence for the property, which impacts its ability to lease on the marketplace. The physical condition of the building obviously varies, with several areas showing signs of wear, with newer areas being in better condition. So let's skip forward to the photos of the subject itself. Beginning on page 5, we have kind of an aerial giving you a sense of the extent of the property and the construction in sections. As you can see, we have a wide variety of roofs, and you can see how that would be an ongoing issue for an occupant or owner. Exterior at the bottom of a graveled yard. Also on page 6, as you can see, only the area where the trailers are standing is paved, so the loading court and the yard are not all done in concrete or asphalt. More of the exterior on page 7. And some of the specialized equipment for manufacture shown on page 7. Then we get into the building itself on page number 8. The office area is somewhat vintage, as you can see at the top of page 8. The bottom we have, this is one of the newer areas where the loading is done, loading and shipping. So that would be the higher ceiling height for some of the property. Then we get into some of the older areas on page 9. As you can see, it's quite low. You have cinder block demising walls splitting the property up quite extensively throughout, impeding the flow of manufacturing and the moving of product about. as well as the storing of materials and finished product. Moving on. Also shown on page number 10, just more of the same, as well as on page number 11. I believe you can see some roof deck in that particular instance. And we can then move on to the site itself. Site description shown on my page number 12, with the property outlined in red. And the actual location shown on a map on page number 13. Now, the location of the subject property, 1180 Springfield. This is the very last property that's within the city of Winnipeg boundaries on Springfield. If you go to the east of this, you're into the RM. There to the north side, you have Kilcona Park, and to the west, essentially nothing until you get to the corner of Lagimodier, and then there's a mobile home manufacturer, I think, that has some display units on the corner there. So we're not talking about a developed industrial park such as Inkster or Fort Garry or St. Boniface, Murray Park, etc. This property is here on its own. It does not have to be isolated. It doesn't have any noxious output or anything of that nature. It's simply significant size property. Moving into the valuation analysis, if we look at my page number 15, and this is these are important points, so I'll run through them somewhat quickly if I can for you. When you're looking at properties of this size, there are specific valuation considerations that don't come into play with more standard size properties in the marketplace. We're looking at large single tenant industrial properties that are outsized for the market in which they sit. So let's run through these quickly. Property specific factors for large scale industrial. Characteristics that bear consideration, that being number one, size and function. Number two, the property being specifically built for the user's needs, typically, as is the case with the subject. And number three, the limited arm's length rental potential. So let's look at those quickly here. Size and function. The size itself tends to classify a property as special purpose because it narrows the number of potential users and or tenants for a property. A plant frequently is designed and constructed initially for a special purpose, requiring a large area, as contrasted to a general purpose or a spec type building, as with warehouse space, etc. Functional obsolescence. Single user distribution or manufacturing buildings of large scale are typically operated strictly for the efficiency of the owner. Users of these buildings have definite work or material flow patterns in mind, which do not necessarily translate to other users. Now, if we look at the subject property, this is exacerbated by the staged development of the property and the interior demising, leading to the less than optimal workflow layout and the functional obsolescence of the building itself, essentially. So I didn't mention this previously, but the owner-occupant would never construct a building in this way today. They would never build 530,000 square feet in the manner that this is. However, this is the situation that they're in, so they continue to operate in it. But it's certainly less than optimal for their needs and would be obviously clearly less than optimal for anybody else. So we're not looking at a tenant that would take a portion of the building. We're looking at 530,000 square feet, essentially. Limited rental potential. When considered as a whole, this type of property usually has extremely limited rental potential on an arm's length basis. Special physical and financial requirements of these large areas minimize the possibility of short-term rental use. It is challenging to estimate a rental value for a large facility for a single user. Often large-scale properties that are rented on the marketplace have been at some point subdivided into multi-tenant properties. These do not offer a fair comparison to a single tenant building, as there'd be significant redevelopment costs that would be needed to be put in place for a property such as this, including alterations such as loading docks, elevators, washrooms, office space, utilities, etc. That needs to be considered as well. All right, so let's move forward and look at what the fair market rental rate should be for the subject property. Now, we also have the same issue that the city has in determining in finding appropriate rental rates, arm's length rental rates on the market. We have done the best that we can here in providing the largest leases out there for the most comparable properties. So I will guide you through this quickly. Keep in mind a subject property, 529,000 square feet in comparison to what we're looking at here. So number one, 1821 Wellington. This is the former Sears warehouse building. We have a $2 per square foot lease there for 146,000 square feet in 2016. That is by the airport. I don't have the original date of construction, unfortunately, for the Sears warehouse, but it is, I believe, in the 60s. Obviously, it's been redeveloped since that time. Number two, I'm going to make an adjustment here, and this is as I didn't have the most recent information, but I see that Mr. Lobenstein does. So my information was that as of 2018, the lease rate for 1093 Sherwin, which was the entire building for Reliance Products, was $3.15 a square foot for 175,000 square feet for a facility with a 19-foot wall height, not on average, but overall for the whole building. I see that that's been updated 2020. The lease rate is $3.40 a square foot. Now that is for a manufacturer, Reliance Products. It is in that kind of airport industrial area. But we're looking at 19-foot ceiling height, and we're looking at 175,000 square feet. So I haven't done the math, but that's certainly well under 50% of the size of the subject property. Now, in 2018, the lease rate was $3.15, and if you jump down to my number 9 on my chart there, you can see that in 2013, so 5 years previously, it was $2.75 a square foot. So you can see the natural progression of rental rate for a property of that size for manufacturing in the Winnipeg market. Now, there's very few of those, so that's one certainly to keep in mind. 1750 Inkster. This was property also referred to by the city. This is a different lease of 102,000 square feet, rental rate of $3.12 being struck in the 2014. That property has been extensively redeveloped with a full loading court put on the front of the property along Inkster. New office space, lots of redevelopment has been invested in that property. Original construction of 1970, and we're looking at a wall height there of 22 feet overall for the property. 1725 Sargent, that was a manufacturer. 2015 lease at $2.65, 103,000 square feet. Older property in 1954, and a 12-foot wall height. But again, we're looking at roughly a fifth the size of the subject property. 770 Pandora. This is this particular property on a greater site is a warehouse building. We had a $2.85 a square foot equivalent net rent for 287,000 square feet in 2015 with a 20-foot exterior wall height. That's certainly one to put some weight on. 630 Kernahan, it's a redeveloped property demised into multi-tenant, 26-foot exterior wall height, originally built in 73. We have 2 leases there, both of them older at 355 net and 286 net. But again, they're 108,000 square feet and 62,000 square feet essentially. So much smaller than the subject property. 630 Kernahan again at 275 per square foot for 355,000 square feet. Significantly better property in terms of interior layout and functionality, etc. And a 26-foot wall height. 1093 Sherwin we discussed, and 1150 Fife is a warehouse property in Inkster Industrial, $3.75 a square foot. Now, some of those leases obviously are somewhat older, but you can see the superiority of those buildings in general in terms of size, location, wall height, etc. So our range that we're looking at, $2 a square foot being the low end. I'm not going to put a lot of weight on that particular comp, but it is there. Generally, we're looking in that 275, 265, 285 range for superior properties that are at most half the size of the subject property. So let's move on to my page number 17. Just run through a bit of this. It does explain the selection of the rental rate for the subject property. Large manufacturing facilities are nearly exclusively owner occupied, with very few large manufacturing leases evident in the market. Rental rates run from $2 a square foot to a high of $3.75 per square foot. Large single occupant manufacturing facilities tend to be owner occupied and not leased, particularly in smaller national markets such as Winnipeg. The Winnipeg market also has fewer industrial tenants or occupants that would require this amount of space. And as previously mentioned, they nearly uniformly occupy buildings that they own. Subject property area of 529,000 square feet is considerably larger than the rental comparables present in the marketplace. I've already discussed its size in comparison to other large manufacturers. Really, there's only a few, and those are all owner occupied. The sheer scale of the property limits the market for potential tenants, as there are very few companies that require facilities of this size. Additionally, the functional obsolescence of the property, as discussed, would also limit interest in the property when prospective tenants compared its functionality and efficiency to the potential for a new facility. So based on this analysis, we've applied a net rental rate of $2.75 a square foot to the subject property. The estimated expenses, we have no difference between our analysis and the city's. And our final ARV estimate summary is shown on page number 19, with the annual rental income at $2.75 a square foot, equating to $1,454,827. Adding the expenses to that gives you a total ARV of $2,590,310 rounded. And that is my presentation. The addenda materials, as I referred to, the decision from the board on the realty is shown on my page A1, A2, with my document following that on A3 and A4. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions, Mr. Levenstein?
Just a few on your page 16. So you went through and you would agree that Sherwin, Fife, and Inkster, the rents that the city has in place would be the most updated rents? $3.40 for Sherwin, $5.07 for Fife, and $3.81 for your Inkster property. That's correct?
11, I didn't look at Fife, just give me a moment here. So, Fife does appear to be $5.07. What was the third one you were looking at?
Inkster at $3.81. So you have Inkster.
I think that might be a different tenancy, as they are different sizes, and that is I don't have the total building size here with me, but it was multi-tenant.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Right. And just looking at your index 5, 4, 5, or sorry, 5, 6, and 7, you stated these are signed in the lease as gross, but then you have a calculated net rent. Do you calculate the net rent out for those, or is this included in the lease? I'm just a little confused.
No, it can't be calculated in the lease, as it's as they were gross leases, so there was no way to set out a net rent. Of course, it's dependent on what the expenses are, so we did calculate those, yes.
Okay. All right. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Kent, any questions? I think you might be muted, Kent.
Yes, thanks so much, Mr. Chair. Have you inspected this property?
I have.
You have? When did you
I
inspect
have,
it?
yes. Pardon me?
When did you inspect it?
I've inspected it a number of times. I think probably the most recent time I was there was 2019.
2019? Okay. Based on your comparables here from the table, the market leasing activity, what would you say, if you had to pick one, what would be the most comparable, closest to the subject property as far as rental?
As far as rental rate, well, that is a good question, and of course brings up the somewhat incomparability of properties of this size and use for manufacturing. But I will look at what we have here and give you some guidance on that. I would probably towards 3 properties perhaps here. So if we look at 1093 Sherwin, so this is a manufacturer. Their most recent lease in 2020 was $3.40 a square foot. You can see the marginal increases that they proceed with from 2012 onwards there. We're looking at a property that has superior loading, superior site, all paved, 19-foot exterior height, which is superior to a good portion of the subject property. And it is, and I haven't run the math, but I'm going to say that's roughly a third the size of the subject property. So they're paying $3.40 a square foot to run their manufacturing facility out of that particular property. Now, I would also point you towards 770 Pandora. This is the largest, well, one of the largest size leases we're able to determine here. So we have a lease there in 2015 that was a gross lease, but resulted in a net rent of $2.85 a square foot as of the valuation date. We have a 20-foot exterior wall height there, and that is for a warehouse facility, which typically do drive higher rental rates than for manufacturing properties. So that is, well, we'll call it roughly half the size of the subject property, and they're at $2.85 a square foot net now, and that's in 2015. Those are probably the best comparables I could point you to in the marketplace. Locationally, Pandora is in Transcona and it's out towards the end of Pandora. It's not as isolated as the subject property, but it is in a somewhat similar situation in that it's on a very large site. There are other multiple buildings there. Originally, it was part of a manufacturing facility as well, but that building itself was strictly for warehousing.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, Harvey, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Smith, taking up where Mr. We're asking you, I guess the question I have is, you talked about the properties in Sherwin and Pandora. Is the Pandora building the old co-op implement building?
I'm sorry, is it the which? I didn't quite catch that.
Your property on Pandora, was that the old co-op implement building?
No, in fact, it's not. It's the was DeFair Furniture Manufacturing, and this was their warehousing building there.
Okay, that makes it very comparable. So I guess my next question is, I see that you have a gross lease of $656, and you had it netted at $286. How did you get to that amount?
Well, we run through the proper process in deducting the expenses from the gross amount that would take you down to the net effective rate for the property. It's fairly standard process in how to arrive at what the actual net for the owner would be.
Well, yeah, I guess I have a problem without seeing the exact numbers. I don't know if they're reasonable expenses, so.
Right,
So,
well, so that's, and I certainly understand your question there. So without setting them, I mean, we can get into, I tend to discuss too much and make these too long, so I can set out more material and it takes too long. But in going through the process, you can be sure that I did include and exclude any expenses that should be either included or excluded according to how these things are done in the appraisal profession.
okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, and I have no questions. So we have heard all the items scheduled, and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your presentations.
Thank you. Have a good day.
And to the panel, we'll take a brief break and then come back for deliberations.